We'll get started soon. Folks can just kind of go around and say where they're from, and I'll let you know. I'm Ray. I live in Brooklyn. I'm from Trinidad and Guyana originally. You! Yeah, Abiodun is actually more Brooklyn than me. I'm an immigrant, so which actually kind of does make me very Brooklyn as well. So yeah, be good to hear where other folks are from. Just popcorn. I don't like. Go ahead.
I'm Daisha. I'm from Atlanta.
Welcome. You can shout out your co-op too. Awesome. Go ahead.
I'm Naomi, also from Atlanta.
Okay. What? Any co-op affiliation?
The Federation of Southern Cooperatives.
Awesome. Welcome.
Kenny Elliott, Fertile Ground, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Welcome.
Opal Baker, Market 166, East Point, Georgia. Fellow immigrant.
Hey.
Hey, I'm Brianna. I'm from Chicago, from the Austin Community Co-op.
Welcome.
Good morning, Diara, Chicago.
Morning, Elsa and Palmyra from Maine.
Welcome.
Food court LACN, Lewiston Auburn Community Market.
Welcome. Welcome.
I'm Alexis from Atlanta. No affiliation to co-op as of yet.
Okay. We'll work on that.
Lauren from Chicago, with Southside Marketing Cafe Cooperative.
Awesome.
I'm Sierra. I'm from North Carolina, Northside Big Co-op.
Welcome.
Malik from Detroit Teachers School.
Where? I'm sorry.
So usually I say I'm from Detroit, the capital of the Black world. Every time I say that, people from Brooklyn, they get all. So I didn't say it this time.
Listen, I ain't got no beef. I don't know what you're talking about. Where are you from?
My name is Amber. I'm with One Community Grocery Co-op, and we're out of St. Petersburg, Florida.
Awesome. Ms. Barker.
Jade, I'm with Illuminate in Western Mass.
Welcome.
I'm the Nelson, I'm with Diamond Hill Co-op.
Welcome. Welcome.
Hi, Diamond Hill Co-op,
Welcome.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm Dwayne Bright. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm working with the Northeast Grocer in Kansas City, Kansas.
Okay. Welcome. Do we miss anybody?
Abiodun, Charlotte Henderson from ATL Shorty with the Doctor's
Anything else? Anything else? Okay. Yeah. Welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Mikrab. I also immigrant, born in Ethiopia, raised in DC, but right now I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'm here with the Wasatch Food Co-op.
The what, sorry?
Wasatch Food Co-op.
Welcome.
The mountain range that's there.
Welcome. Ms. Lene, you want to go?
Peace. I'm Renee Gilbert Williams with Detroit People School Co-op.
Hey. Would you like to go? Co-operator, junior co-operator.
What's your name? And where you from?
Detroit.
Okay, welcome. Did we miss anyone?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a side of retreat. I'm from Houston, Texas. The historic third ward that we think is the Black Neck of the South. But anyway.
Okay. I feel like it's a rap battle that's about to start. I'm for it. Just so you know. Welcome.
And homage, of course, to Detroit.
Awesome.
Yeah, Detroit and Houston, we got this alliance. Just to let you know, bro.
All right, we'll see about that. All right, so these are your co-creators, myself and Amaha, who sadly could not miss it, but he wanted you all to know that he is actively working on what we're talking about today, and he will be here later on. Come in. Come in. He'll be here later on, so you can tell him how great or horribly I did. And I'm sure he will be very excited to hear either way. So I'm a co-founder of Central Brooklyn Food Co-op. I'm currently taking a well-deserved sabbatical from co-op organizing work and have mostly just been writing and thinking about different ways that co-ops can improve, especially Black-led co-ops, and that's where this came from. I'm a mother, I'm a writer, I'm a food justice activist and organizer. I'm newly the executive director of something called Community Kitchen. I'll tell you about it another time, but it's not really relevant to this conversation, although everything is relevant. But anyway, I'll tell you another time. So Amaha is a co-founder of Gem City Market in Ohio. He's an associate professor of sociology and he's a scholar researcher, social healer. And if you've never met him, he is magical. So please meet him. He is wonderful. We've collaborated. This is our actual second collaboration. I'm really sad that he's not here because there would have been music and fanfare. And yeah, I just didn't, I didn't do it. I'm sorry. So Black co-op development throughout time. So let me just shout out Dr. Nembard right now because this presentation is very, very much from her work. I've sourced very heavily from her. I've been learning a lot from her work, from her book, from her talks. She's one of the first people that really came out and was like, wait a minute, Black people have been doing co-ops for a very long time, and this sort of association of, you know, this white hippie counterculture kind of co-op creation is not really the case. Black people have been practicing co-ops since we got here, since we were kidnapped and brought here. So it's very important to have that context when we're starting to talk about it in this way. So she said, what we learned from the history is that economic cooperation was natural and continuous in the Black community of the United States. And so let's talk about how. So before there were, you know, sort of these documented co-ops, there were other kinds of cooperative gatherings and movements within Black communities, enslaved populations, right? One of the best known are kitchen gardens. What are co-ops actually? Let's just get that clear first. What are co-ops? Let's come up with a good definition. Go ahead.
Usually when a group of people have some sort of shared need, so they create a shared solution to that need, whether it be, you know, housing or food or all of the above, and then they democratically run that shared thing.
Absolutely. Anybody else has, thank you. Anyone else has something to share? Go ahead.
The ICA definition.
Sure, let's do it.
Cooperative autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations.
Right.
Through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise.
Thank you. I will challenge the word enterprise, but I would say, for example, how do we see kitchen gardens being a cooperative? Do we think it is? Listen, I invite rebellion. So, you know, if there's anything I say that you don't agree with, please tell me. Go ahead.
I mean, to answer the question, like, do I agree? Yes.
Okay.
I definitely agree. I think that, like, and I agree with you that challenging word is enterprise, because it doesn't have to be so formal. Just to practice cooperatively working together in owning something and working towards the same mission. So just having a kitchen garden, people coming together to work together, make democratic decisions, just that foundation alone, to me, is what makes it.
Awesome. Thank you. So other ways that enslaved folks, enslaved Africans practice cooperativism, they pooled resources together to buy each other out of slavery. There were burial cooperatives, mutual aids, cooperative farms, mostly by freed, formerly enslaved folks. Pooled resources to take care of widows, children. We were always taking care of each other. And lastly, maroon communities that survived pretty much on their own, so-called runaway slaves, For example, the Combahee River Collective that were in South Carolina, Gullah Geechee land. These were women who worked together where their men were away fighting wars and they lived beautifully and peacefully. And I would like to go there back in time someday because it sounds awesome. So when we think about more sort of formal co-ops, right? What Jessica Gordon-Nembhard is basically saying, Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nembhard is saying is that we sort of, besides the ones that were sort of informal and the ones that are formal, we've been doing this again for a long time. And so starting from the 1860s, which someone remind me when the Rochdale Principles came out.
1844.
1844. What are the Rochdale Principles? Yes, thank you. We'll talk about that. So there are 7 cooperative principles. We'll get into specifically what they are because you all will tell me what they are. Not right now, but you will. But they are sort of the bedrock of most of the co-ops that have developed even in this room. And, you know, they're sort of the guiding principles of cooperativism. And they're, you know, and how co-ops should be in communities, how they should interact together, but we'll get there. We'll talk a little bit about that. A lot of the co-ops that are coming out in this first wave, right? They did follow the Rochdale Principles, but even they sort of did stick to a sense of camaraderie and community building that was very significant for that time, specifically because it was with and among whites and Blacks, right? It was also with labor unions, the women's rights movement. So they were a part of just about all of the movements that were happening in that time, populist era movements or progressive movements. And so the Knights of Labor is an example. They were responding to a lot of the backlash at the time during Reconstruction. And so in Reconstruction, you had the Black Codes. Do folks know what that is?
Yeah.
Can someone say what it is? You said yes with your whole chest, come on.
Yeah, they were just a bunch of de facto laws that pretty much.
Some de jure too.
Yeah, criminalized Black life. No vagrancy, lottery.
Right. So basically they'll make you unemployed and then imprison you for unemployment. They'll make it hard for you to leave jobs. I mean, it basically was slavery once again. So in response to a lot of these Black codes and all of this sort of crackdown, Ku Klux Klan terrorizing folks and killing them, Black folks banded together with labor unions, women's rights movements, white rural movements to create labor unions specifically for farmers. And that was one of the most significant things that was happening with, you know, this early sort of this first wave. And a lot of the backlash was very swift. It was a very successful co-op, had over 1 million members nationwide. And because of the backlash, for example, the Thibodeau massacre in Louisiana, I believe that was 1867, it was in response to a strike. Thousands of people, actually, let me not say that. Can't remember exactly. A lot of people were killed. I'll get my numbers straight next time. And so a lot of the folks who were members of the Knights of Labor, they went underground and they sort of researched in another co-op called Colored Farmers Alliance. And that was also one of the largest co-ops at the time. Members, again, faced backlash, but the new formations were very significant. And these actually, I mean, one of the strongest points of Dr. Nembhard's book is that success is not tracked in whether the co-op still exists. Success should be tracked in whether or not it changed and helped people's lives. And it absolutely did. So we move into the second wave where in the 1930s and 1940s, what was happening in the 1930s? I mean, I have the answers there, but you know. Great Depression, right? So everyone was poor. Everyone was going through it, right? I think it was 80% of the nation were living in some form of poverty. But again, Black people banded together and created co-ops. That what was really significant about this time in particular was that it centered political education. In fact, there were co-ops that were dedicated specifically to co-op education. Anyone ever been to BRICS, Franklin Center in North Carolina? Yeah, I've been there with you. So Bricks actually started, well, actually, it didn't start. Bricks has a very complicated history, which if you ever go there, you can experience. I experienced it both spiritually and and physically. And so, you know, it was a breaking ground for mischievous slaves, right? You can feel that. And then it also had this wonderful history where they had specifically education for young women. And they started, let me get the name, it was the Breaks Rural Life School in 1934. It was run by an American missionary, and they developed a program in adult education specifically around co-op development. And then, of course, you have Ella Jo Baker, who started the Young Negroes Co-operative League. You had the Brotherhood of Sleeping Porters. Harlem created a food co-op in 1939 called Harlem's Own Co-op. And, you know, for the most part, they were, sorry, let me take off my phone, Amaha. Amaha has been texting me, and I think he just texted everybody. He's very much in the room with us, just so you know. So the co-ops again that were developed were the significance of it were they were very much run by women. Actually, what I forgot to say about the Knights of Labor as well was that for that time it was very significant that women had such strong input within these groups, right? And particularly Knights of Labor. Women leadership was centered in this. And of course, we continue with, in the 1930s, women's leadership was very much centered, and they were the ones pushing for the political education at the time. I think our book has a quote from Ella Jo Baker as well. I was actually going to put it in, but I was like, that's redundant. Anyway, so some of the backlash is that they struggled to raise capital and compete with white-owned businesses. Apparently, I had another backlash, but it didn't put it there. But you know, research is ongoing. So in the 1930s, these co-ops were very much based in survival, right? People could not get food. They could not get have access to hello. They didn't have access to housing. They didn't have access to gas. And a lot of the co-ops were specifically responding to those needs. There were a lot of the Black-led co-ops in particular. They were food, they were on housing, and they were on gas. So they were specifically responding to survival needs of Black folks at that time. And one of the things that Dr. Nembhard notes is that co-ops do bring people together because of survival, but that after they sort of meet those needs for survival, they come with a sense of cooperation, working together, corporate government, all of the things that we experience in co-ops that go beyond just the survival of what the sort of creation was lending itself to. So we have third wave, which is my favorite. There are a lot of co-ops that existed during this time in the 1960s and 70s. What was happening during the 1960s and 70s? Civil rights, right? You had Black consciousness movements. I should just let, you know, Baba Malik come up here and do this section and just talk. So one of the things, and if folks know me, the biggest outrage for me doing co-op development work in Brooklyn is not knowing about the East as an organization in Brooklyn. I did not find out about it until like maybe 8 years into doing co-op development work, which is wild. And it literally existed in walking distance of my home, right? It was all around me. The last known space that the East operated in was, as I walked out my house, I can see it. It was the Armory. And where I live right now, it's like literally down the street where a couple of the spaces were. And so, you know, I actually just recently wrote an article about the East and about the food co-op in the East. And I'll shout out Baba Malik because he was so instrumental in getting me folks from there because he visited. And I'm making sure to publish this very, very incriminating quote and picture of him. I'm just kidding. But the quote is incriminating and I cannot wait to publish it. It's recorded. You were sharing love for Brooklyn. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. You might be have to, you have to be careful when you go back to Detroit after that. So just, you know, I'm just warning you. But within the realization of the East, what I saw was a lack of appreciation for our own histories. There were people who were involved in the co-op creation that knew about it, that just never really spoke about it because there was not a culture of talking about our history. There was a documentary that came out in 2022 called The Sun Rises in the East. It's available for free on YouTube. I invite you all to watch it. And what the East is an organization. It was a multifaceted organization that sprung up after community control of schools ended. And what community control of schools was basically an experiment where Black folks and Black families and Black teachers were basically saying like, this shit gotta change. This is wild. The majority of the teachers in the school were white, specifically Jewish. And that's important just because there was a lot of accusations of anti-Semitism when people were expressing real racial tensions that were happening within the schools. And what the community control of schools did was this experiment that lasted for, I think, 2 or 3 years, where parents and Black teachers were invited to write curriculum that were Afrocentric within the schools alongside regular instructions. And then the teachers that were tasked with sort of administering this curriculum revolted and basically came in and decided not to teach. And so when the parents found out, they fired the teachers, and then the UFT had a teacher strike. The teachers had a strike, and then so the parents and some of the teachers, the Black teachers in particular, crossed the picket line and had school anyway. And they were under enormous threat. You know, there were pictures of like guns on roofs for people crossing the picket line. It was really intense. But watch the documentary, you'll get a better sense of it. And so one figure that emerged from all of that is this person named Jitu Weyosi, who was a teacher at the time and was already radicalized by that and by the Black consciousness movements that were happening internationally. He was a part of a lot of those movements. He went to a lot of those conferences, one of them in Trinidad, where I grew up, and another one in Guyana, where I was born. And actually in Guyana, that is where they were inspired to create a food co-op in Brooklyn. And so I spoke to the founder of the food co-op in the East, which first was called Kununuana. His name is Mensa Wali. And he told me the story when he was like in Guyana and looking at how the government functioned and stepping in this thick, soil with his. Also learning about the way that the government was running in this cooperative manner, and took those ideas and brought it back to Brooklyn and started a buying club. And that buying club evolved into a food co-op that lasted for almost over 10 years, definitely, probably close to 10, 15 years. I get different numbers. So Kununuana transitioned to a Ruru food co-op. They had about 3 different locations at their time. So it opened in 1970, and some records state that it's open until 1992. I had the honor of speaking to folks that worked in that food co-op. It was a beautiful experience. And when the article comes out, I hope you all read it. It was super fun to write. And what the East really did was create an ecosystem, and the co-op was a part of that ecosystem. And what undergirded that ecosystem were the 7 principles, what we call the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, but were 7 principles of Kawaida, which is a whole other story. But we'll get into that as well. Some of the backlash, a lot of it happened during the leadership transition when Jitu Weyosi was stepping down, and they were attempting to sort of decentralize the leadership. It didn't work out too well. Jitu Weyosi was a very charismatic leader. He was someone that people followed, that people believed in. He was somebody that people said he saw things in you that you didn't even see in yourself. And what was so significant about the way that he worked with people was that he would just tell them, okay, you're gonna be the editor of Black newspaper. And that sometimes led to lifelong careers in what people were doing, what they do to this day, right? And so once he sort of transitioned out of the organization, a lot of confusing things happened, a lot of leadership missteps. And then there was a lot of infiltration. I was told specifically that they were being watched by the FBI. and the CIA, there was lack of consistent building infrastructure. The co-op in particular, every time they moved was usually because of the building infrastructure. And so the movement sort of dissolved. But again, according to Dr. Nembhard, what is oh, I forgot to mention the school. The school is very significant, Uru Sasa Shule. So that was one of the sort of culminating things that happened after the protest, was like, we need our own schools. So the school was the center of the East, but then all these other organizations sprouted up, and they were all sort of cooperatively owned and governed. Well, the democracy of it all is a little debatable, but let's just say that there was a lot of intention to do democracy within it. So a Maha likes to talk about this fourth wave, right? If you've ever met a Maha, it's like you meet a Maha and then it's like fourth wave, Maha fourth wave, right? What is this fourth wave, right? We're here, this co-op conference, it's year 5 of Black-led Day. I remember year 2 of Black-led Day, which was the first one that was in person. I remember Malika Keaty coming up, talking about how we gangsted this space. I remember about, listening to the formation of how this all came about and how insistent folks were that this be a Black only and people of color space, right? So we're in the fourth wave right now. What's happening in the world? What is happening in the world right now?
You got a lack of access to fresh food.
We still have a lack of access to fresh food. What else?
White lads.
Sorry?
White lads. The same thing that happened.
A bunch of different white-led movements. Is that what you're saying?
Same thing that happened under Reconstruction.
Exactly. That's a good point. So Reconstruction is very, very close to this era, right? A lot of fascism, a lot of white supremacy, right? That hasn't ever really stopped. But what I think is different is the normalization of it, right? Where during the Reconstruction era, like you would have Ku Klux Klan function as police officers. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in the crumbling of what was the semblance of a social safety net, there is even less resources coming from food banks, and there's just a lot of need. So the social safety net has totally been yanked underneath people.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Land laws?
So, land loss. You want to say a little bit more about that?
There's been a lot of Black land law determines where in the past 100 years, but especially in the past 40 years.
Yes. Thank you. Go ahead.
So we live in a much more globalized society. Do you think that has a role to play in all of this?
What do you mean by globalized?
We live in a more connected world, and it's much different than, say, the past. So these issues are more in the spotlight, so to speak, rather than the past. And before internet, this was all word of mouth or in the paper.
I don't know. Knights of Labor got 1 million members. We haven't crossed 200 yet. I'm just kidding. I'll get back to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, land access has been, in all the spaces that I've been in, definitely in the last 10 to 15 years, for the younger generation of farmers being able to afford land has been one of the most bemoaned issues that I've been hearing. And I understand, because real estate is a lot more expensive than, and with the urban farmers and even the rural farmers, where land was fairly cheap back in my great granddad's days, even though he didn't have wealth. It was still a struggle, but land is expensive now.
Yeah, it just sounds like a lot of the same circumstances that cause a lot of these other co-ops to form. And so what's interesting about co-op, I'll get to you in a second. What's interesting about co-op development is that these waves come along when there are these sort of very accentuated points of history, right? Where things really seem dire, where people really need to wake up, right? Where we have no choice but to work together.
It's been a significant attack on democracy.
Thank you.
Last 10 years.
Absolutely.
The member control is part of principles and values. I think that's how we get to the fourth wave.
Absolutely.
In a country where we were told that we were valued, we could vote, Black and women. Now that has been under attack, and we currently see it in this new administration. We saw it coming with Project 2025. So I think that's something that's been growing to create a workplace.
Absolutely. So I would say has been in the last 10 years, and 10 years ago was the Dump's first administration, and we're back here once again. That we know that our governments are not going to save us. We know that Democrats are not going to save us. And so we have no choice but to work together. And so some of again, to the gentleman's point, in 1880, there was a resurgence of white supremacist and fascist movements, right? So it is now, right? According to Jamila Medley from Collective Courage Fund, there are close to 200 Black-led food and land-based co-ops across the US right now. There are different structures. There's buying up the block, there's housing, there's retail, grocery, which a lot of us are a part of or working to create. And a lot of them emphasize collective healing, organizing, and historical correction. At least I hope they do. And I think that's part of what I would like to center today, that, paying attention to the landscape of the past co-op developments and how they functioned, their lessons learned, very important, the backlash, all of these are very critical to our co-op development. So this is from Detroit People's Food Club. I just figured geographically it made sense. There's no other reason why I put it here. But it is a very beautiful, beautiful space. If you get an opportunity to visit it, I highly, highly recommend it. This beautiful altar was created by Piper Carter. Is she coming? No, we don't know. Maybe Piper's coming, and then you can tell her how beautiful her altar is. Anyway, so back to these 7 principles. So a lot of the earlier Black-led co-ops did follow the Rothschild principles, the Knights of Labor, the 1930s. They were learning about these principles. They were creating their own types of principles as well, but they were really centering the needs of Black folks in general, right? But the later co-ops didn't really. The East definitely had no idea what this Rothschild principle, they didn't know anything about that, right? They were operating under what I mentioned before, which is the 7 principles of Kawaida or Kwanzaa, right? And so all of the foundations of the East operated under those principles. That was the bedrock of those principles. Well, I think we have time. That was my whole thing. I was like, do we have time to do this exercise? And I think we do. So let me just get to this. I wanted to point out the lessons from each of these ways, because the legacies are super, 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 super important, but so are the lessons, right? And I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we don't talk about the mistakes made within our own co-op development. And I think sometimes that had contributed to maybe an earlier demise of these co-ops than they probably would have had, right? Conflict resolution, which is something I didn't really put it here, but that should be something always front of mind. Co-ops are about working together. And if we cannot work together, then we cannot have co-ops, point blank, period. There is going to be conflict. It is inevitable. Your co-ops are going to have conflict. When you start your co-op development, start with that understanding and try to make processes to deal with conflict in the very beginning. And now, so a lot of the, these are the lessons from the specific movement. So as I said, the Knights of Labor, the Young Negroes Co-operative, they all had very strong Black woman-led movements within them. They were all very strongly led by Black women. And what I've noticed, and it's there's actually in creation of this, I was like, maybe I want to create another one just about Black women and co-op movements. That'll probably come next year. But because there's a lot of different things happening, even in our current co-op movements, where there is sort of very strong male charismatic leadership that is counteracting the Black woman leadership within these co-op spaces. And what I've noticed with that is that, you know, to a certain degree, there's an expectation, and there's a quote in Dr. Nembard's book, that men are the leaders and women are the members. when in actuality, a lot of the times, the women are the silent leaders and the men are just the ones that are more public facing. And so what we have to really be very, very vigilant about within our co-op movements is how we are dissecting patriarchy. We have to be very, very conscious of that. And not only patriarchy, but obviously capitalism. And capitalism, because our co-op movements have to be violent, I don't even want to say violent, it has to be strongly anti-capitalist, which starts with the individual. We have to be very, very careful how we're replicating capitalism within our movements. If you've ever heard about white supremacy culture, look up white supremacy culture. That's what I'm saying it right, right? White supremacy culture, and specifically in the workplace, it's like sense of urgency. There's a bunch of different ones. That's not only done by white people, it's done by us too, right? Capitalism is the water that we swim in. It is the way that we have functioned for years. And it's very easy for us to do that, even as we're doing something that is anti-capitalist. I am guilty of it. We are all guilty of it. We have to be very vigilant in rooting it out. So alongside patriarchy, we have to be aware of capitalism. I'm putting that as a framing for this whole thing, and conflict resolution. So censoring Black women leadership in co-op development. This is not just because I'm a Black woman and it feels very convenient for me to say that. I'm saying that because in the movements themselves, when Black women leadership was centered, the co-ops were sustainable. They were successful, right? Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nembard is working on how co-ops, people who are involved in cooperative movements are more likely to experience joy, and the people who experience the most joy are Black women. So there are a lot of ways that that could happen or cannot happen, right? I've experienced both sides of it. But what I'm saying is that when you're centering Black women leadership within co-op development, you're working towards sustainability. Continuous political education, community outreach, and organizing. Not last year before last, Amaha and I did a presentation about community organizing, and it specifically talks about centering community organizing in your co-op building. It never stops. You never stop reaching out to the community. You consistently have to do that. That is a part of your plan from start till the end of time, right? Consistently relationship building with the community is going to be a feature of your co-op forever. Connect with other like-minded movements, including international African diasporic movements. The scariest thing for white supremacy is when Black people internationally get together. It's the scariest thing. There are numerous examples of how our movements were quickly squashed when Maurice Bishop from Grenada came to speak in New York, right? Went back to Grenada to a whole invasion, right? Guyana, Trinidad, when they had all of these conferences where they were holding and keeping political prisoners in the country, maybe not so much Trinidad, but that Guyana did some. Of course, Assata Shakur in Cuba. When our movements are international, they do not know what to do with themselves. So I would say if that scares the shit out of them, do that. Do that thing. Decentralized charismatic leadership and always have a succession plan. Charismatic leadership is important. You need somebody that is inspiring, that is going to bring people together. But after that charismatic leadership, you better have a succession plan because everybody's going to get burned out. Yep. And when everybody gets burned out, what are you going to do? You should listen to Gabby's presentation and figure out what to do. Let me know. We were very sad that we were presenting together. But anyway, well, at the same time. But burnout is inevitable in capitalism. It's just a fact, right? And if we're working towards an anti-capitalist structure, we have to be mindful that when we see burnout, it is because of a capitalistic structure that we are perpetuating. And then part of this capitalistic structure is having charismatic leadership at the forefront of our movements. And when that charismatic leader is no longer there, the movement falls, right? So always have a succession plan. This one is a little controversial. I wanted to put it here. And I want to also make it clear that I'm not pushing any one religion or faith, but one of the strongest distinctions in our movements, especially when compared to white-led movements, is that we always have a bedrock of something that is either spiritual or very strongly cultural that is also linked to something spiritual.
Right.
I'm giving you evidence. This is not, right? And so when I say multi-faith, right, I'm not exposing just one faith or one sort of way of being. I'm saying that our movements as Black people need to have a spiritual element. They just need to have a spiritual element. And there's so many ways that we can think about this, and there's probably a workshop that we can do just focused on that. But for now, let's just say that we are envisioning a world that does not exist right now. And if we're envisioning a world that does not exist, we are drawing from things in the past that we know and that we've learned to create this world, to co-create this world, but that our vision is the thing that is going to lead us forward. And that vision has to be created from something that is dreamed up from us. And so it has to be the bedrock of spirituality. Anything faith-based or culture that is also linked to spirituality has to be the bedrock of our vision making. And I'm very specific in saying vision making versus the bedrock of the principles of the organization, because that's when things can go awry, right? Avoid anti-intellectualism and destructive expertise. So this is coming specifically from the East, right? Where there was this distrust of people who weren't ideologically aligned, but who had knowledge of different things, of different ways of being. And sorry, specific expertise in certain matters, right? So if you get a lawyer, right, who understands and interprets the law in a particular kind of way, don't distrust his expertise because he ain't down for the people, right? You can take that knowledge and adapt it and sort of create your own ways of being. But to discount that is harmful to our movements. Also, understand that the co-op needs to grow as the folks within the co-op are growing, right? You all are here in this workshop. You will not leave the same way that you came. You come to another workshop, you won't leave the same way that you came, right? We're all shifting and growing each and every time, specifically when we gather. And then we go back to our calls, we're like, yo, Ray said this thing in this workshop, and I think we're gonna do this, and the people are like, what are you talking about? We're not, you know what I mean? And so you have an opportunity to learn and grow. And it's not to say you need to do what was told or what was said or what you're bringing back, but bring it up, because this evolution is part of how we're going to grow. And keep the constant sort of pushing back on it because maybe it's not too ideologically, maybe it doesn't pass some kind of test, is going to be part of the downfall of our movements. Pay attention to rules, policies, and regulations. Again, this is coming from the 60s and 70s. Government got them, the taxes, the this, the that, right? We may be anti-capitalist, but we live in capitalism. And so we got to pay attention to these rules, right? And this is also part of having people who are experts in these particular ways so that they can help move us forward. And then this is the biggest one, right? This is what Amaha is working on. This is what a lot of people are talking about right now. We need to create our own Black co-op ecosystem. We need all our support systems. We need all our consultants. We need all our resources. We need all of the things that help us build our co-ops to be by us, for us. And what I'm saying is that as someone who's been a part of co-op development for over 10 years and has been working with, support from white consultants, support from, how to develop a co-op written by by Food Co-op Initiative, right? What I will say is that those things are helpful, but those are not the things that are going to get us to sustainability. We need our own things. And we need our own things that are developed by us, again, for us. And I'm hoping, because I'm hearing from different folks, including Amaha, Gabby, who's doing her very entertaining thing next door, I bet you all feel FOMO. that this is something that people are thinking about very critically. And I invite you all to be a part of that movement and think about how we're going to do that. It's not enough that we work with Black folks in other ways of doing our work. It's important that they are informed by our philosophies, by our thoughts, by our experiences.
Can I add to that?
Please.
That includes the shelves that are in our grocery stores, the glass bottles that hold the products, the labels that are put on the products, that includes that as well. That we, start thinking about or doing or finding the folks that manufacture those items as well.
Thank you. My personal policy is that we work with Black folks and this is one of the things that Dara Cooper, the founder of the Alliance, was very, very specific about. Everything that she tried to do, Black caterers, Black support, Black hotels. So and sometimes it wasn't possible, but you tried. You tried to do it. And where it didn't exist, you tried to put the building blocks in place so that the existence can happen for later generations. And that is the point here.
Can I just add, I want to add the nuance point though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in alignment with our agreed upon principles and values.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I live in a place where Black folks are doing well. Like they not, you know what I mean? They building houses, they while we being displaced, they living large.
Yeah.
They got their own grocery store, they done moved to their side of the neighborhood. So I'm not interested in working with Black people who don't have an explicit community wealth building principle and philosophy. I'm not interested in making another family rich so they can break the generational, I don't know what all.
Right.
I'm interested in working with people who are going to share equitably
Gotcha.
with other Black
Gotcha.
folks to create community wealth building.
Yeah.
So,
we could talk about the myth of supporting Black businesses another time as well. I have a lot to say about that. But, the point is Black community development, not Black individual development. And a lot of these wealth building schemes are specifically about a couple of tokens getting through, and we need to break that, right? If the community doesn't get through, ain't nobody winning. Cicely, how much time do I have?
Let's get ready to hold the time.
Okay, cool. Good to know. So the other part will come at another time. I want to make space for questions. So what I would say, these are some thoughts that I want you all to kind of think about. So one of the biggest, she had to do it anyway. One of the biggest distinctions that I found, both in the article that I'm, almost done, mostly done, okay, kind of maybe done with it, is that Black co-ops must be invested in world making. We have to be linked to like-minded movements, as I said, both diasporic and at home. And when I say like-minded movements, connect your food co-op to a housing co-op, to a community garden, to an economic bank, a Black-led bank, connected to all of these movements, because all of these things are going to be a part of your sustainability and your survival. The point, when you think about the East, as a member of the East, you are going to the jazz performances, you are buying your books from the bookstore, you're getting your news from Black News, you're shopping at the food store, at the food co-op, Kununuana Food Co-op, you're getting your clothes at Mavazi, I think I'm saying it right, at the Mavazi, how they had a clothing co-op. Right? You're sending your children to Aruru Sasa Shule. You're going to the evening classes. You're going to the dance classes. They created a world where every part you go, everywhere you hit, you were a part of something that was Black and co-op. That is the dream. That should be the dream for your co-op that you're doing. And I know it sounds like a lot, and I know it sounds overwhelming, but you start by planting little seeds, little forms of connection. You reach out to people, you have inquiries, you ask people to come to your meetings and do a presentation. You start building those relationships and they reverberate over time. So these are the questions I'd like you to ask yourself, right? How can we connect our co-op movement to other Black solidarity movements? How do you personally want to show up in the space? And how do you want to be remembered? And this is not just about legacy creation for an individual. This is about, as Amaha says, putting your gifts to the center of the room and seeing how you can actually work towards moving this work forward and making it sustainable. So I will end there. And I'll ask, you have the questions, yeah.
Can we go back to that third wave?
Sure.
And I just want to ask you, because I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. There was, it was in the book, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. They're historically, they're definitely part of that third wave. And so, just.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I focused a lot on food co-ops here. I failed to mention, so the Black Panthers had housing co-ops. They had, of course, the breakfast feeding program. They had, I'm forgetting, they had another co-op. They had a couple different co-ops. There was the Harlem River Co-operative. There was, yes, I believe the Southern Federation of Co-ops. There was, yeah, the Black Panthers had housing, daycare, healthcare, and they had bakeries as well. Freedom Farm Cooperative, of course, by Fannie Lou Hamer in 1969. Yes, there was a lot of co-ops. I'm sorry, I'm very New York biased, so I focused on that. But you are absolutely right.
It's in the book.
Yes, absolutely. Jade.
Brenda, you talked a bit about these different Black economic cooperative structures. It sounds like most of them are gone.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what is to stop that from happening this new? Like, what is it that caused these things?
Yeah.
That from happening again?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the answer, but I'll attempt.
Go back to your slide where you had the stuff. Where you told us all the things that we could do.
Oh, all the lessons. Besides, no, I think I understand specifically what you're saying. So like, for example, the East used the 7 Kwanzaa principles as the underpinning, right? And they would speak, they would use Swahili words. And when I asked them, I was like, why would you use that? If now that we do DNA, we know we come from specific places, and a lot of us, depending on where we're from, we know what parts of Africa we came from, right? If I don't know if anyone knows Jory, there's a lot of his work embodied. He basically does like a historical landscape analysis of where people are from. And then he suggests, based on the group, the African tribe and group that came there, what economic system you should use for your work. It's very interesting. I don't know if he's here. I don't think he is. But if you ever want to get more about that, I highly recommend that you talk to him. But that's an example of how people can start to think about different economic structures that work for them. The economic structures that the East used, they used the resources that people were using. One of the things that happened with the transition from the buying club to the food store was that they wanted to have a food store so that they can have items there and people can use their food stamps and their WIC. And I think one of the members, Ms. Sabina, said about 80% of the folks that were coming in were using that. So that's not really an economic structure, but that was one way of thinking about the resources that people had to use in the space that would, continue, will make it usable for them. So this is all to say, I don't really have a clear answer. I think it would take some research, some testing, some understanding, and some balance, right? We need to work within this economic system, absolutely, but that's not to say that we can't think and dream about other economic systems, bartering, susus, right? If folks know what susus are, right? We could talk about that another time. Community banks, lending. I think one of the things that the Alliance does is really give folks a lot of opportunities to build their own financial understandings alongside getting very, very low interest loans to do the work. So I think a lot of these are helpful, but it will take a little bit more research and digging.
And I was just gonna say, I think part of the challenge has been figuring out what is context specific. So I'm a sociologist too, right? And so everything doesn't work in every place.
Exactly.
The infrastructure isn't there. The resources isn't there, right? That's where that creativity and that innovation needs to come, which I think can be driven by artists and creatives, being able to say, how can we fit this particular model in our context? And I want to say the most important thing I think that helped me, because I started with the white co-op. I started with Cleveland model. That's where I started my co-op learning, was with the Cleveland model, right? But I think Dr. Jessica, when she said, and everybody should buy the book, because it's a 10.
Collective Courage.
And we need to push up those.
And a
things.
graphic novel is coming.
And, yeah, and if you buy them in bulk from Penn State, then you get a discount. Okay, and so I wanted to say, when she said that cooperative is a behavior.
Yeah.
It's a behavior, it's an action, right? So whether you don't have the business formation, it's the behavior of cooperating.
Yeah.
And how do we recognize that behavior and encourage that behavior in our local community?
Thank you for that. Do I have a minute, Cicely? Yeah, I don't. Okay. Someone had their hand up over here. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the white supremacist characteristics, and I feel like we talk about like
it's white supremacy work culture.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And work components, how as Black-led cooperatives, do we acknowledge those, and then how do we combat them successfully for us to win?
Exactly. That's the question.
It's a loaded one.
No, it's a good one. You have to recognize it when it happens. And then you have to realize that it will continue happening even when you recognize it, right? I'm standing up here, I'm talking about this with you all. I'm guilty of a sense of urgency. And I have to sit back and be like, what am I running around for?
Yeah.
Why do I believe that I'm the only person that can do this? What type of arrogance is that, right? And then you sit down and you're a little self-reflective, and then you realize, okay, I want to prove myself. I want to prove my worth. Is that helpful right now? Is that helping anyone right now? I don't think it is. It's helping me. What am I doing? Am I breathing well? Right. And it starts with the self-awareness. You have to undo capitalism within yourself. That's where it starts. And then once that happens, because if everybody is invested in that exercise, and if everybody is holding people accountable lovingly, if there's a way that we can give feedback to other people, we're supporting and we're consistently learning about these things, I think that we can create more sustainable movements.
So it sounds like in your groups, your co-op groups, they'll have time set aside together, everyone ask the questions and have a discussion with each other.
Yeah, like
maybe.
educate within your group.
Yes.
Right. And then that allows you the power to notice when urgency comes up, to know what power hoarding or
Yes.
paternalism, right?
Exactly.
When they
Thank you. You're calling them all out. Good job.
That's really quick. I think that's the reason why the culture and spirituality is so important.
Absolutely.
Talk about it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because, we all, know that if you're African or Black or whatever you see yourself as, and you are spiritually led by that, then you automatically become an enemy of the state. Right? So it's automatic that in order to combat white supremacy, just turn to the core of your culture, which
Absolutely.
is spirituality.
Thank you.
So,
I'm gonna pick on Baba Malik. You have something to say. I feel it. You got nothing to say about this?
You've done a great job.
Oh, thank you. No points of rebellion. Thank you, everybody. I wasn't fishing for compliments. I was looking for rebellion, but all right, I'll take it. Go ahead.
Sorry, because I keep talking.
Go ahead,
So I guess thinking about like capitalism and white supremacy and building the team to do the movement building in your communities or to create the co-op. This is hyper specific, but I'll try and generalize it. We, unlike many co-ops that I know, have staff, like paid staff that is doing the startup work. And some of our board members have been like, well, we have this money to pay the staff, but are there folks who take a little bit more time and energy to get up to speed? Folks who, may not have the expertise or intellectualism. Why are we keeping them around? And part of my struggle in figuring out this work is like, our focus in our whole workforce development later down the line is to hire folks who historically lived in the neighborhood, who are coming from public housing, who are coming out of incarceration. And so the work is to invest in these people, to invest in our people, right? And so I guess in terms of keeping the movement going and the pace of what we're doing the movement and the pace of developing people, Yeah, just any thoughts around that and like making a case.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that is sort of how you can get a little bit extreme on the intellectualism and expertise. You're not investing in these people, you are working alongside these people. And I think that distinction is extremely important, right? I think Baba Malik once said that your movement should go at the pace of the people, right? You can't go ahead of the people, you cannot go slower, it has to move in pace with the people. And so the people are the ones that are going to sustain the co-op. They're going to be the patrons, they're going to be the owners, they're going to be the ones for the co-op. And so if you are thinking that you're doing something for them, you went wrong, right? You have to, you don't have to do anything, but my suggestion is that you invest in folks so that they are working alongside you. And you recognize that their lived experience is as valuable as your expertise. And you center their lived experience as their expertise. And so, yes, you're bringing certain things to the fore, but if they are not invested, and this directly happens with me, where the co-op, all the co-op development stuff, only a couple people were having access to it. And so when we would come back and bring it, the rest of the people were like, I don't know what you're talking about. They weren't at the tables. And so this idea that you're bringing knowledge to the people is going to actually slow down your movement. And so a lot of the times you do have to slow down to speed up. And the slowing down is investing in their understanding of the work. Yes, you have this lived experience, but here's the analysis. Yes, you understand what it is like to be in this neighborhood and the challenges that you face. Here's some context behind it. And what's most important, because I had a white lady who is a co-op developer tell me to my face that Black people are not interested in co-op development. What is very important here is that people know their history. And so not only the context, but the history is super important, because when she's telling me, like, what do you tell somebody when they say, I'll never work in a grocery store? Say that Black people did it. They did it. They've done it all throughout history. We have done this. We are doing it again. Point blank period. Thank you for that question. Wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone. You've been a great audience. Really enjoyed. I'm happy to answer any other questions offline. Probably.
Short break, or just a transition for you to go to the next session. We'll start promptly at 10:45 in one of these two rooms. I think there should be coffee and other stuff in the hallway. There's also the storytelling room, if you want to visit that, and there's a room in the end of the hallway where you can get copies of journals, stamps, that swag, all sorts of other things. But see you back here at 10:45. Thank you.
Thank you. You're going to tell me you're rebellion now?
No. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Great. Only critiques I would have.
Please.